I'm John Abdullah. I'm the Director of Constituent Product, as was just introduced. I've been at Oxfam for almost 15 years, and we are a global organization. We work in over 80 countries to end the injustice of global poverty. And I'm excited to be here today, and in particular in this moment, to talk to you about this topic because I really feel pretty passionately about the moment that we're in. And I wanted to sort of start things off with this quote by Noah Yuval Harari. He's this historian. If you've read *Sapiens*, his most popular work, tracking the history of humanity. And this is what he has to say about the AI revolution. Compared to the AI revolution we are facing now, all previous revolutions in history will pale in comparison. Just pause and think about that. A historian who has tracked the history of *Sapiens*, and that's what he says about AI. It's a big deal. If I can leave you with nothing else from this session, I hope it's that we need to wake up and act now as nonprofits in this space. And I will be right there with you to be critical of AI, but I think we cannot ignore the moment that we're in and how we need to prepare ourselves for that moment. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And the big question is, how do we find our way through this, right? We're at the beginning of what's being described as a fourth industrial revolution. We're already chronically under-resourced for technology. We aren't tech companies, right? Aside from, I guess, Engaging Networks. You are a tech company. So how do we navigate this time with the resources that we have? And for me, what I want to talk to you about is how do you sort of build the capacity, right? So this isn't going to be an AI talk where I talk to you about all the cool things AI can do. You can go to plenty of those. But this is how do we prepare ourselves for that moment? And, let's think about the moment we're in again. So when I joined Oxfam 15 years ago, it was sort of riding this wave of optimism around social media. We felt like, all right, we've got a technology that can finally connect us all and shine light on the disasters or the crises that are happening in the world that people otherwise maybe didn't have access to, right? And we saw these amazing moments in our world as a result of social media. And then shit got ugly. And we're in the moment we're in right now with social media and the way that it has divided us and manipulated us and distorted our realities. And so when I think about the AI moment, I think we did our best to sort of get in early with social media, but I think we were a bit naive in how we thought about that technology, and we bought into it in ways that haven't necessarily helped channel it to do as much good as it could. So with AI, I'd like to believe that we're in that early stage where maybe we can do some good. Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you about, I want to first of all say, when I talk about our journey at Oxfam, this is sort of our version of how this has played out, but these lessons I hope will resonate and, help adapt and integrate into your organizations, but the context matters. So this is our journey, and I really do believe it is a journey. And the way we think about that, as a journey that you get started with and evolves over time is really important in how we can sort of set ourselves up for meeting this moment. I decided to illustrate this whole thing with some sort of gratuitous space movie themes because, I don't know, I like space movies. It feels like we're living in a sci-fi right now. And if we're going to go on a journey together, let's do it on a spaceship. So I'll start off with this incredible moment, 2001: A Space Odyssey, groundbreaking film, right, that really foresaw a lot of what we're actually living now with AI and the role that it might play and technology generally. And there's this incredible moment where the apes sort of discover the first tool, a bone, and it gets thrown in the air, and as it falls, there's a cut to a satellite in space, right? So it's like however many millions of years or whatever. Transitioning. And the first point I want to make here is get started. What I'm about to share, I think you'll see the sort of journey we've been on, and that's going to look different for each organization, but the point is we can't afford to wait, and I think getting yourself started can be the hardest part of that journey. So for us, we had been through so many projects. I've led, multiple sort of big CRM or website projects as examples where everybody's left feeling burnt out and you have a compromised product that came 2 years late. right? You miss deadlines that were never really, people didn't necessarily believe were going to happen anyway. And so we were working with traditional kind of modes of working that set us up to fail. And part of the journey, and I think the sort of mind shift, is getting to a place where you can work iteratively. So that's one of the things I want to talk to you about and how we sort of approach that. And I think one helpful framework, very basic, you've probably seen various forms of this, but this is the AI generated version of it with Space Theme that I created. Process, people, products, right? So think about your processes right now, your people, and your products. And I would say getting started in any of those areas will help sort of reinforce the others, right? So I'm not sure there is a right place to start here. I can tell you what we did, but I feel like investing in those 3 areas and kind of taking stock of where you are as an organization can be really helpful. So for us, we looked at process in particular. Why are we running into these big technology projects that don't meet deadline and people feel like shit, get burnt out, leave after, and you don't necessarily have a product that, you know, you feel the best about by the end of it. I'm generalizing, it's not all bad, but you know, they're tough, these big projects. So we looked at adopting Scrum in particular, an agile framework, right? This exists already in the software development side, has for a while. And that for us was a helpful way to stop thinking in traditional modes and work towards a more kind of incremental approach. And so when it came time for us to replace what was Blue State Digital Tools, a platform that no longer exists, and it was sort of our all-in-one solution for fundraising, digital fundraising, as well as advocacy, rather than immediately say, okay, we need another all-in-one tool, we're going to do, you know, 10 years of discovery and build a list of requirements and talk to everybody. We instead decided, let's break down the various things that that tool does. So primarily email marketing, ECRM, fundraising, and advocacy, right? And let's look at what are all those technologies out there that could actually meet that need, not necessarily to find another all-in-one, but to look at like what is the best option for each of those things. And by the way, what is the best option to help us do more with when it came to automation and email marketing. And so for us, where we landed with that, controversially at the time, was actually adopting Engaging Networks and HubSpot. We felt like Engaging Networks was the best option for us for advocacy fundraising, right? We knew that that had what we needed and what we wanted, but when it came to marketing automation, this was back in like 2018, we felt like HubSpot really was the place we wanted to grow that program. And so this was an example of a process that kind of took us in a different direction. And as part of that program, or rather transition, we decided to use an established framework. We're not going to like make this up ourselves, to go through that process and adopt that. So I'm sort of getting into the second takeaway here around breaking it down. This is The Martian, a movie where he gets stuck on Mars, which doesn't sound very bad these days, and needs to escape or get home, I guess. And there's this quote, at some point, everything's going to go south on you. You do the math, you solve one problem, and you solve the next one, and then the next. And you solve enough problems, you get to come home. So, you know, this can be a helpful way of thinking about our projects, right? Rather than, okay, 2 years from now, I need to do all of this. I need to get all of it replaced all at once. There is another way. So, again, you've probably seen versions of this kind of process description, waterfall versus agile. There's the more linear kind of waterfall approach that we had been taking, where we invest a lot of time in the planning and designing. And then there's the agile way, which is a simpler kind of regular cycles that you're operating in, right? So how this played out for that particular project that I mentioned is we decided to start with HubSpot. Like, let's leave what we have in place and actually get our email moved over to HubSpot first. And then separately, let's get our fundraising solution started. So like it was an incremental build where we released parts of that functionality and then could test and iterate and adapt that and see how it actually performs before we layer on more of our technology. So I'll leave it at that surface level, as I'm doing with all of these, to try to leave a little time for questions here. But you know, that shift is a really important one, and I think process can be a great place to start because you can do it with the people and the resources that you have now. This is Scrum. definitely highly encourage checking that out as a framework that you can tap into. We followed it pretty by the book to start, and I'm not going to walk through that whole visual, but that gives you some appreciation for kind of a framework that helps you break it into cycles that goes a little bit deeper than the visual I just showed you. The next point I want to make is you've got to assemble the right team, right? The people part of this is so, so important. We've seen countless examples in movies, in fiction, of a team of sort of misfits coming together and being greater than the sum of their parts. And I really think that's true when it comes to managing technology. Like, we don't need, in my view, specialists who go super deep on things, their specific domain of technology, but can't actually talk to people and can't operate outside of those very constrained, boundaries. We can't afford to operate as a team with that kind of model. And so what we started to do in 2020 is work towards what is now this constituent product department that I manage, where it's a team that oversee all of that technology. So we are the team that really helps enable the organization. We're like the, Q in James Bond. You come to us if you want like the cool gadgets and you want to figure out how to apply technology and data for your marketing purpose. So getting that team started, and then they actually came up with this mission statement that we still hold for our team. We empower people to fight inequality by providing actionable data and a seamless experience to increase committed supporters. So this idea, again, that we're a team that enables the organization has been a really effective model for us. And the way that we've decided to structure that looks like this. But again, I think there's other ways you could approach this. The leadership piece is really important. It doesn't mean, managers. In our case, we've got like me and 2 other managers on our team that oversee and actually manage the people. But really the leadership point is you want people looking after the technology who can make the decisions, have some resources behind them, and are thinking holistically, right? And getting out of alternative models where it's like the technology's fragmented, you have different teams kind of owning different products, they don't talk to each other, the people or the products, right? That gets real messy and I think holds us back. So when we talk about AI, that all matters because we've got to be able to integrate our teams and our data in order to fully leverage AI. And I can't not cite Star Wars if I'm going to use space movies, so there you go. Use the Force. Specifically, you must feel the Force around you, here between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. So if data is like the Force, right? It connects everything. See what I did there? It needs to flow, and that's going to be critical for us to be able to leverage AI. Our systems need to talk to each other. The way we decided to approach that, was putting Salesforce at the center. So that was another big project that we took on in that sort of incremental way, where we put Salesforce between, at the time, Engaging Networks and HubSpot as a connector. And then from there, we built it out further to take over our CRM capability. So that's another example of like getting it in play and then building it up from there, right? Not an all at once kind of conversion. So when we talk about our products and the sort of data flowing, this is like probably not even all of the products that we're using right now, but we've really embraced the sort of best in class and moving away from the all-in-one approach, but instead focusing on connecting this whole ecosystem, which I believe, puts us in a better place than buying into one specific product, including Salesforce, by the way, which we've really been burned by that model of like trying to go for other products that your salesperson's going to try to sell you. I think, really stopping and considering where you want to invest in other products that can flow and speak to your core is worthwhile, including the data warehouse, which we have with Civis Analytics, and that makes a lot of that possible, so I'll call that one out as well. So let's take it home, wrap it up. Meet the moment. It's a really big one. Pay attention. We've got to focus on AI and how to leverage all of the technology, the people, process, systems, how to sort of aim it towards this ultimate use of AI to improve our organization and the world, at least to the extent that we can. I think thinking big, right? Have that vision, but break it down into small increments. Focusing on how you organize your people. I think flexible teams can do amazing things and really empowering your teams, whether it's a specific structure or you have existing teams that you can help work better together. And then, connection, it's key. We've got to be able to connect these systems, these people, and really allow our data to come to life in this moment. So I'll stop it there. I don't know how I did on time because we started a little late. Do we have
You're
any time for
fast.
questions?
Yeah. No questions yet. Everyone can take a moment now to put in their questions for John.
My goal was to leave time for questions.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I'll ask you a question while we're waiting for folks to chime in here. Have you read Yuval Harari's latest book, Nexus? Is
Yeah.
that where you kind of pulled a little bit from? So that's a really great book, by the way, for folks who are kind of trying to ask a lot of questions and explore AI in the world, in our organizations in general. And he talks about the AI revolution as being sort of the first time that a human is not in the loop of information transfer, and that's really where the crux of just the scope of change is going to come from. How do you think about computers maybe starting to take over some of the information loops and pathways that you might be leading on today that are human driven?
Yeah, and it's a great shout. The book I think it's called Nexus, right? Definitely worth a read. I mean, I'm terrified. I have kids, young kids, and imagining or trying to imagine the world that we're entering, it's we don't know where it's going to go. And so much of it is incentivized by companies trying to make money right now, and that competitive, who's going to be able to make the most money off of this soonest. So I don't know. I feel like there is a lot of opportunity when it comes to certainly, creating efficiencies. We all know this, right? It can do certain things faster. I've used it for data analysis, certainly, and content generation. But when it comes to agents, and I think what you're alluding to, the next phase of it, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of how we. There's the specific challenge to the incentive and what's the exact challenge that he talks about when it comes to understanding the motivation behind AI.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
blanking on the term.
Yeah. It's the objective that you give to an algorithm to say, okay, go out and get people to engage with this content. But if that's the objective and there's no context or guardrail on it, it's that content could become very toxic because that's something that people respond to. I can't remember the exact name, but I know that that's a big concern.
For sure. So that probably wasn't a great answer. Maybe it just sort of speaks to the uncertainty of this moment, though. I feel and why I think we need to be practitioners of this and really try to get deep into it early on so that we can help do what we can to channel it.
Yeah, it was a hard question to start with. I'm sorry about that.
No,
does
please.
anyone want an easier question coming through here? Am I on the right screen? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, also, reminder, you can upvote your questions that you want to bring forward. So here's a question from Eric Rubidoux. So many platforms are baking AI directly into their platform. What are your thoughts on in-platform AI versus an external AI tool with access to your platforms and data?
It's a great question. Because that's the other thing. We've got to really navigate the BS around all of this, right? Everything is claiming to have AI built into it and selling us on that. And again, we're nonprofits. We can't afford to just buy all the products. So the approach where I'm at right now with that is even the way that Salesforce is implementing AI, I'm fairly skeptical that it'll get it right. And I think part of the issue is, where's your data? Because if you don't have all of your data loaded into Salesforce, right? For us, certainly transaction history is there and there's some degree of contact information, but we've got all the interactions living outside of that in HubSpot or, SMS tools or the other tools that I just showed you. And so I think for it to really work and to create that kind of tailored insight and experience, it's got to operate where all the data is. And for us, that's kind of why we went with that data warehouse model, getting our data outside of all of those systems and then plugging the AI into that to be able to really gather the insight, do modeling, right, to understand segments. So we've been starting that process to try and identify patterns to maybe segment differently or look for opportunities. So to me, that would be the better place to plug it in. I'm sure there are still benefits to having AI built into some of the other tools for sure, like Salesforce as an example, but I would be skeptical of how much you sort of buy into it. Yeah, that's the short answer.
There are more tough questions to come, I promise. do you have any common KPIs that you track across all these data products and hope AI can take over or assist with?
Common KPIs. I wonder if is that meant to like on the data hygiene side or the internal side or more on the fundraising side?
That was Christina that asked.
Yeah.
I'm going to transfer a lot. Well, you asked a great question before the break, so.
I'm still creeped out. You remember my name. I'm usually the quiet data scientist. So anything you can think of. So in our systems, we care about the number of supporters, and then we segment out by system. But I don't know, I don't know what you care about at Oxfam to do your work. And then it would be amazing if I could have just like a little widget and push the button and it'll tell me, okay, unique supporters across all these systems versus the crazy data manipulation I do now.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, okay, so again, this is where I'll plug Civis Analytics or, a data warehouse kind of option, because then you can layer in identity resolution so that you understand the supporters across all of them. You inevitably you have someone who has, 2 email addresses in one system and their main mailing address in a different system, and you're counting them as like 3 people because you don't know. So I feel like, part of it is considering an identity resolution either product or maybe you already have some data hygiene in place. And then I think having those KPIs come out of that centralized data store ultimately is going to give you the cleanest view. And I do really feel optimistic about AI's use in that case, right? Like the idea that I can provide to our marketing team not just like a dashboard, but actually a chat interface that lets you interact with the data, right? Because I don't want to be, right now it's this back and forth with the data wizards and the analysts where someone asks a question, but it's not really what they meant, and then they have to go back and forth, right? We've all experienced this. Imagine if the marketer could just do that with the AI chat, right? Just say like, okay, what I actually meant is this, or why did this happen, and start digging deeper. We've got to be careful because AI is super confident about everything it says and many times ridiculously wrong. So that caveat. But, I think it's going to improve. When it comes to KPIs, I mean, the other thing I'll say is we're really trying to move towards the more long-term thinking, not just about bottom line KPIs like number of supporters or, some of the revenue figures, but also looking at who are our most committed donors and how are we tracking them over time. So that's been an area of focus for us as well. And that I think, again, it helps to have kind of a centralized data store. Hopefully that's helpful.
Great questions. Going back to some of your sort of organizational changes, what are some key takeaways from the team mindset shift that occurred while moving to Scrum?
Yeah, another great question. So one of the most important aspects of Scrum, I didn't walk through that visual in detail, but there's a retrospective. And it's the idea that you're breaking down your work into whatever increment you decide, right? 2 weeks is often case the increment that people use for a sprint. And that means every 2 weeks, you're doing not only a review of the work that was done, but also a retrospective of how you did the work. And that's critical. Like some teams skip that, and you shouldn't. Because what I found when we implemented Scrum, and this was back in 2018, it immediately surfaced all the stuff, the dysfunction that it's there, it's happening, but people don't talk about it. So like the things that in their day-to-day work that they just felt weren't working, or maybe their interactions with stakeholders, there were some really tough conversations as we rolled it out. And, you could look at that as a negative, but I think it's got to come out, or else you're just going to be operating with that dysfunction at the foundational level. So we even had some people leave because they were like, I don't want to keep doing this every 2 weeks. Like, this Scrum thing isn't for me. And that's fine, but like now I feel so good about the team we have and the idea that we're having that regular communication. And that's just like what they came into and what they expect now as a team. And I think it makes us much stronger. So yeah, that's how we've approached it.
Love that. Thank you so much, John. We are at time and we're going to transition here, but everyone give it up for John Abdallah.
Thank you.